You were primarily known for writing YA books. The Crane Wife is your first adult novel. What led you to want to write, to sort of switch genres then?
The Crane Wife is not my first adult novel. It's my first adult novel published in the US.
There you go.
My very first novel was called The Crash of Hennington. It was only published in the UK and Canada, weirdly. And I like to say it sold in its dozen to friends and family. But I also wrote a short story collection for adults. And then I wasn't expecting to write for teenagers. It was kind of the other way around. And I just had an idea for a story, and I wanted to write it in a particular voice. And as I kept trying to find the voice, as the voice revealed itself to me, I thought, oh, this is for teenagers. Oh, well then, great. Okay, that's a different thing. But let's go that way. And so I don't know. I refuse to let anybody else tell me what I'm allowed to write, so I put the same effort into each story, and I put the same commitment. So to me, it doesn't feel like I'm writing one than another. It just feels like the next book, whatever it needs to be. So I don't know. I reserve the right to do what I like. I think all writers should. Don't let yourself be pigeonholed.
Absolutely. Do you find any differences between writing in two modes?
Gosh, the question comes up a lot about what makes a teen book, and I don't know that you can define it. I suppose I was thinking about this earlier on the tour that someone asked point blank, and I thought, and just off the top of my head, I started thinking, in a book for teenagers, the concerns are about pushing boundaries for the first time, and they're about crossing taboos for the first time, because they're all about finding out what your own boundaries are. And that's really what being a teenager is, I think. It's about pushing at a boundary, crossing a boundary, making a terrible mistake sometimes, and learning to live with that mistake. And those are fascinating concerns, and those are universal concerns that anybody of any age can relate to. And I suppose in an adult novel, probably you have already found your boundaries, and the concerns are slightly different in that, I don't know, are my boundaries too comfortable? And what happens if I'm pushed outside my comfortable boundaries when I think I'm experienced? So I don't put a qualitative measure on either of those. I think they're both equally fascinating, and I think they're both equally relatable to, but maybe that's probably getting at something about the difference. Otherwise you just know. It's like that's not the Supreme Court definition of pornography. You can't define it, but you know it when you see it. Oh, okay, that's going to go online forever. Yeah, great. Okay, I shouldn't have said that. Okay.
That's great. You were born in the U.S., you live in the U.K. Do you think there's a difference between the American and British literary sensibilities?
Oh, God, everybody likes to say that there's a difference between the UK and US sensibilities, and of course there is. But, I was on a panel, there was a conference in Munich, in Germany, and it was particularly about women in digital jobs. Like there was women from Google, and they asked me to speak about A Monster Calls because the chair of the festival had narrated the book in German on the audiobook, and so the question was coming up, and it was me and a female film director who's become a really great friend of mine, and they kept trying to pin us down, me and my female friend, men are this and women are that. And I said, in the end, I don't think you can begin any factual sentence. All men are blank, and all women are blank, except that all men are men and all women are women. And even that's not really true. And I don't think you can. Of course, there are differences between the U.S. and the U.K. sensibility, but as soon as you start to say how, I'll give you a million exceptions. And I don't know. Stories are universal, and every human being needs them. And of course, there are cultural differences. But the leaking of culture is an important thing to write about, and an interesting thing to write about. So, sure, there are differences. I couldn't name them, because you could easily contradict me, and if you named one, I would contradict you. So, sure there are, but what are they? What a completely unhelpful answer, but sure, just read what you like. For God's sake, read what you like. Yeah.
That's a good segue. Your new book, The Crane Wife, is based on a very well-known Japanese myth, I guess.
Yeah.
And were there cultural differences there you were exploring by putting it in kind of a Western domestic situation?
Well, it was the idea behind that was more for just the eternalness of a story. and how myths are myths for a reason, and they last for a reason. And the Crane Wife is a Japanese myth. I heard it from my Japanese-American kindergarten teacher, who I adored. And but much in the same way, I think like one of the not the final, but one of the final Miyazaki films is Howl's Moving Castle, which is an English book. And I'd love that he's taken an English story and seen it through his sensibility, and the story remains accessible to everyone. It's particular, it's got particular English qualities, it's got particular Japanese qualities, but that combination doesn't make the story unreachable or unrelatable to. And that's what really interested me. And I thought, here's a myth that I've known all my life, that comes from a culture not my own, but stories. Use the word again. Stories leak, and they hang around for a reason, because they explain something that we need explaining. And so I thought, okay, this story has always been important to me. I've always been attracted to it. So let's see how I can negotiate with it. And I would love to hear how other people negotiate with it. I'd love to hear how other people tell the same story, because that's the great thing about any folktale and any myth that lasts. So that's more what it was. I was thinking, gosh, okay, here's my take. What's yours?
That's great. The Crane Wife also shares a title with an album by the Decemberists, and I was wondering if there's a relationship between the two.
There is. I had the idea for the book and about the folktale for a long time. There's a different kind of texture to this particular folktale that I thought there's something there. And the best thing you can do with an idea is to wait with it, because if things start sticking to it, then you know it's a good idea. And then I had another idea about how stories are told and where the truth gets told. And it's a bit like retelling a myth, because if something's happened to you and then someone has observed it happening to you, will their version of that thing be different from your version, and where's the truth and where do they cross? And I thought that was interesting, how a story changes depending on who's telling it, which of course is about the same thing I'm doing with the book, the myth. But whenever I write a book, I tend to almost always have a theme song. And it's not that I'm writing a book about a song, but that the song makes me feel, I have an emotional response to the song that I want a reader to have to the story that feels right. And I use it as kind of a touchstone just to go back to remind myself this is the feeling I want. And so I'd had these ideas for a long time about retelling of a myth. And I thought about the Crane Wife. I'd also thought about the myth of Ariadne. But the Crane Wife is the one that was sticking around. And then I heard the Decemberists' Hazards of Love album. I thought, this is fantastic. And so I went back and bought their whole back catalogue, as all obsessives do. And the Crane Wife, their song cycle, Crane Wife 1, 2, and 3, is based on the same myth. We're from the same part of the country. We're both from the Northwest. And the song is so beautiful. And it's gentle and insistent. And it's beautiful without being stupid about it. And I thought, that's it, that's perfect, that's the final ingredient, that's everything that makes it gel together. And so, yeah, it felt like it felt like in the myth, seeking through, being told in another way, and it felt like a sign. I don't believe in signs at all, but nevertheless, I thought, okay, it's time.
That's great. Patrick Ness, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.